What if you died 999 times and forgot who you were every single time? What if the only way to break free was to remember the very first life you ever lived? Our protagonist has been stuck in an endless cycle of death and rebirth for centuries. But here's the thing, every time he dies, his memory gets wiped clean. He wakes up in a new body, in a new world, with no idea who he was before. He's lived as a king, a beggar, a warrior, a farmer. He's been rich, poor, powerful, weak, and every single time he dies without knowing the truth. Until now. Because in his 999th life, something different happens. A single memory flashes through his mind just for a split second, a memory that doesn't belong to this life, and it's enough to make him realize that this isn't his first time being alive, that there's something bigger going on, something that's been hidden from him for hundreds of lifetimes. And when he finally remembers his first life, everything changes. Because that first life, it wasn't just any life, it was the life that started this entire curse. And the person who cursed him, they're still out there, waiting for him. This is the story of a man who lived 999 lives without knowing who he truly was. And this is the story of how he breaks free. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The protagonist wakes up in a small village on the outskirts of a kingdom he's never heard of. He's 17 years old, or at least that's what his body tells him. He's working as a blacksmith's apprentice, hammering away at metal day after day, living a simple, quiet life. Nothing special, nothing remarkable. The blacksmith he works for is a gruff old man who doesn't talk much. The protagonist spends most of his days in the forge, surrounded by heat and smoke, creating horseshoes, tools, and occasionally weapons for the local guards. It's honest work. Hard work. The kind of work that makes your muscles ache and your hands rough. But lately, he's been having dreams. Strange dreams that don't make any sense. Dreams where he's someone else, where he's fighting in battles he's never been in, speaking languages he's never learned, living in places he's never seen. At first, he thinks it's just his imagination running wild. Maybe he ate something bad. Maybe he's just stressed from work. Maybe it's because the summer heat has been particularly intense this year, and he's spending too many hours in front of the forge. But the dreams keep getting more vivid, more real. And then one night, he dreams of something that shakes him to his core. He dreams of dying, not just once, but over and over and over again. He sees himself being stabbed, drowned, burned, poisoned. He sees himself falling from cliffs, being crushed by boulders, dying of old age. And every time he dies, he sees the same thing, a bright white light, and then nothing. And then he wakes up in a new body, in a new life, with no memory of what came before. When he wakes up from that dream, he's drenched in sweat. His heart is pounding so hard he can feel it in his throat. His hands are shaking uncontrollably. Because deep down, somewhere in his soul, he knows it wasn't just a dream. It was real. All of it was real. But he pushes the thought away. He tells himself he's being ridiculous, that there's no way he's lived multiple lives. That's impossible. That's insane. That's the kind of thing crazy people believe, not rational blacksmith apprentices who just want to live a normal life. So he goes back to work. He hammers metal. He helps the blacksmith. He tries to live a normal life, but the dreams don't stop. They get worse. And now he's not just seeing his deaths, he's seeing fragments of his past lives. He sees himself as a soldier in a war, covered in mud and blood, fighting enemies whose faces he can't quite make out. As a merchant traveling across deserts, leading caravans through sandstorms and bandit attacks. As a scholar reading ancient texts in languages that look familiar but shouldn't be. As a child playing in streets he doesn't recognize, in cities that feel both foreign and strangely like home. The protagonist starts having these moments during the day too. Not full dreams, but flashes. He'll be hammering a piece of metal and suddenly know exactly how to forge a type of sword he's never seen before. He'll hear someone speaking in the market and understand a language he's never studied. He'll walk past a building and feel overwhelming sadness, even though he's never been there before in this life. It's getting harder to ignore, harder to pretend everything is normal. And then one day, something happens that changes everything. He's walking through the village market, trying to clear his head, when he sees an old man selling books. Old, dusty books that look like they've been around for centuries. The man's stall is tucked away in a corner, almost hidden, and most people walk right past it without even noticing. But the protagonist can't look away. Something pulls him toward that stall. Something deep inside him screams that he needs to look at those books. He approaches slowly, feeling almost like he's in a trance. The old man looks up at him with eyes that seem far too knowing, far too aware. He doesn't say anything, just gestures to the books with a wrinkled hand. The protagonist picks one up at random. The cover is worn leather, cracked with age, with no title visible. He opens it carefully, afraid it might fall apart in his hands. It's a book about reincarnation, about souls being reborn over and over again, living different lives, experiencing different things. And as he reads the first few pages, something clicks in his mind, like a key turning in a lock he didn't know existed, because the book talks about a specific type of reincarnation. A cursed reincarnation, where a soul is forced to live over and over again, dying each time with no memory of their past lives. And the only way to break the curse is to remember the very first life, the life where it all began. The protagonist's hands start shaking as he reads. His vision blurs. His breathing becomes shallow. Because this isn't just some random book. This is his life. This is exactly what's been happening to him. The dreams, the flashes, the strange knowledge. It all makes sense now. He looks up at the old man, ready to ask questions, but the man just smiles. A sad, knowing smile. And he says something that makes the protagonist's blood run cold. You're starting to remember. Good, you don't have much time. What do you mean? The protagonist asks, his voice barely above a whisper. The curse only allows awareness in the final life, the 999th life. After that, if you don't break free, you reset completely. All progress lost. You start from life 1 again, with no chance of ever remembering. This is your only shot. The protagonist wants to ask more, but the old man shakes his head. Everything you need is in that book. Read it, study it, and act quickly. You have less time than you think. Before the protagonist can respond, someone bumps into him from behind. He stumbles, catches himself, and turns back to the old man. But the stall is empty. The old man is gone, like he was never there at all. The protagonist looks down at the book in his hands. He didn't pay for it, but somehow he knows he's meant to have it. He buys the book without thinking twice. Actually, he realizes he's already holding it and the old man is gone, so maybe he didn't buy it at all. Maybe it was just given to him. He takes it home and reads it cover to cover. And the more he reads, the more things start making sense. The dreams, the strange feelings of déjà vu. The skills he has that he never learned, like how he somehow knows how to fight with a sword even though he's never held one in this life, or how he can read ancient languages without ever studying them, or how he instinctively knows the weak points in a person is defense even though he's never been trained in combat. It's all because of his past lives, because somewhere deep in his soul, all those memories are still there. They're just buried, hidden, locked away behind barriers created by the curse, waiting to be remembered. And according to the book, there's a way to unlock them, a meditation technique that can help a person access their past life memories. It's dangerous, the book warns, because remembering too much too fast can break a person's mind. The human brain isn't designed to hold the memories of multiple lifetimes. It's like trying to pour an ocean into a cup. Eventually, the cup will overflow, and the person will go insane. But the book provides a method, a slow, careful way to access the memories without being overwhelmed. It involves deep meditation, focusing on specific questions, and allowing the memories to surface naturally rather than forcing them. The protagonist doesn't care about the warnings. He needs answers. He needs to know who he was, why this is happening to him, what he did to deserve this curse, and most importantly, how to break free before it's too late. So that night, he tries the technique. He sits in his small room, on the floor, cross-legged. He closes his eyes and focuses on his breathing. In and out, slow and steady. He clears his mind of all thoughts, pushing away the worries about work, about the strange dreams, about everything. He lets himself sink deeper and deeper into a meditative state, feeling his consciousness drift away from his physical body. And then, when he feels completely calm and centered, he asks himself the question, who was I before this life? At first, nothing happens, just darkness behind his closed eyelids, just the sound of his own breathing. But then, slowly, images start appearing in his mind. Blurry at first, like looking through foggy glass, but then getting clearer, sharper, more defined. He sees himself as a young boy, maybe 10 years old, working in fields. Not these fields, different fields, in a different place. He's wearing ragged clothes that are too big for his small frame. His hands are dirty, covered in soil and calluses. He's poor, very poor. The kind of poor where you don't know if you'll have food tomorrow, but he's happy. He has a family, a mother who loves him more than anything in the world, who sings while she works in the fields, who always makes sure he eats before she does. A little sister who follows him around everywhere, chattering constantly, asking a million questions about everything she sees, picking flowers and trying to braid them into his hair. The protagonist can feel the warmth of the sun on his skin in that memory, can smell the earth, can hear his sister's laughter. It's so real, so vivid, like he's actually there, living it again. They don't have much, but they have each other. Their house is tiny, barely more than a shack, with a leaky roof and gaps in the walls. But his mother always keeps it clean, always has a fire going, always makes it feel like home. The village they live in is small, maybe 50 families total, all of them struggling but helping each other when they can. There's a sense of community, of belonging. And then the image shifts. He's older now, 15, maybe 16. He's still in the same village, but something's different. There's a tension in the air. People are scared. He can see it in their faces, hear it in their whispered conversations. And then he sees why. There's a man in dark robes standing in the center of the village. He's tall, imposing, with a voice that carries across the entire area. He's demanding tribute, payment to the master, money, food, livestock, whatever the village can provide. He says the master protects the land and demands payment in return. But the protagonist's village is poor. They have nothing to give, barely enough to feed themselves. The village elder, a kind old man who's lived there his entire life, tries to explain this to the robed man, tries to plead for understanding, but the robed man's face twists with anger and disgust. "You refuse the master?" he says, his voice cold. "You refuse the one who allows you to exist?" The elder stands his ground. "We don't refuse out of disrespect. We simply have nothing to give. We're barely surviving as it is." The robed man stares at him for a long moment. Then he smiles. It's a terrible smile, a smile that promises pain. "Then you'll learn what happens to those who refuse the master," he says, and then he leaves. The village tries to prepare. They know something bad is coming. Some families talk about leaving, finding somewhere else to go. But where? They have no money, no resources. This is their home. This is all they have. And then the image shifts again. To that terrible day. The protagonist is working in the fields with his mother when he smells it. Smoke. Thick black smoke. He looks toward the village and sees flames. Hears screams. They run. His mother grabs his hand and they run as fast as they can. But when they reach the village, it's chaos. Soldiers are everywhere. Not just a few, but dozens of them. They're wearing armor, carrying weapons, and they're destroying everything, burning houses, killing people, laughing while they do it. The protagonist sees his neighbors being cut down, sees children crying, sees the elder trying to reason with the soldier's leader and being struck down for his efforts, and then he sees his house. It's on fire, and standing in front of it, he sees his sister. She's trapped, surrounded by flames, screaming for help. He doesn't think. He just runs. His mother is shouting behind him, telling him to stop, but he doesn't listen. He has to save his sister. He has to. But he doesn't make it. A soldier sees him running and steps in his way. The protagonist tries to go around him, but the soldier grabs him. He fights back, struggling with everything he has. He's just a teenager, but fear and desperation give him strength. He manages to grab a farming tool, a hoe or a rake, something with a wooden handle, and swings it at the soldier. The soldier barely flinches. He's trained, professional. He knocks the tool out of the protagonist's hands with ease and punches him in the stomach. The protagonist falls to his knees, gasping for air, and then he has to watch. He has to watch as the flames consume his house, as his sister's screams stop, as his mother tries to run to the house and is cut down by another soldier. The protagonist is still on his knees, tears streaming down his face, when the soldier who struck him stands over him. He looks down with cold, indifferent eyes. "This is what happens when you refuse the master," the soldier says. And then he raises his sword. The protagonist looks up. He wants to say something, wants to curse them, wants to fight back. But he's just a kid. He's weak. He's powerless. The sword comes down. He feels it pierce his chest, feels the cold metal slide between his ribs, feels his blood spill out onto the dirt. And as he dies, as his vision fades, he feels something else, something wrong. He feels his soul being grabbed, being pulled, being trapped. He doesn't understand what's happening, but he knows, somehow, that this isn't a normal death, that something terrible has been done to him. And then everything goes dark. The protagonist gasps and opens his eyes back in his present life. He's on the floor of his room, lying on his side, curled into a ball. His heart is racing. Tears are streaming down his face. His whole body is shaking. Because that memory felt so real, so vivid. He could feel the pain, the fear, the helplessness. He could smell the smoke, hear the screams, feel the sword in his chest. But more importantly, he remembers something else. Something the soldier said before killing him. This is what happens when you refuse the master. The master. The same master mentioned in the book. The same master the robed man had demanded tribute for. The protagonist lies on the floor for a long time, trying to process what he saw, what he remembered, because it wasn't just a vision, it was a memory. His memory. From his first life, the life that started all of this. He was killed because his village refused to serve the master. And somehow, that death triggered a curse that trapped his soul in an endless cycle of reincarnation. But why? Why would the master curse him specifically? He was just a poor village boy. He wasn't special. He wasn't important. He didn't do anything wrong. His village didn't do anything wrong except be too poor to pay tribute. Unless there was something about him that the master wanted, something about his soul. The protagonist tries to meditate again to see more, but his mind is too shaken. He can't focus. The images keep coming back. His sister's screams, his mother falling, the sword in his chest. It's too much, too overwhelming. So he spends the rest of the night thinking about what he saw, about his first death, about that mysterious master, about what it all means. Over the next few days, he tries the meditation technique again and again. Each time, he pushes a little deeper, sees a little more, and slowly, more memories start coming back. Not just from his first life, but from all his lives. He remembers his second life. He was reborn as a baby in a different kingdom, in a different time. He grew up to be a soldier. He spent his entire life fighting in wars he didn't understand, for causes he didn't believe in. He killed people, watched his friends die, and finally, at the age of 32, he died on a battlefield, cut down by an enemy's spear. And as he died, he felt that same pulling sensation, that same sense of being trapped. He remembers his third life. He was a thief in a large city. He stole to survive, living in the shadows, always running, always hiding. He was good at it, fast, clever. But eventually he got caught. He was executed in a public square, hanged in front of a crowd, and again, that pulling sensation, that trap closing around his soul. He remembers his seventh life. He was a noble, born into wealth and privilege. He had everything, money, power, respect, but he was miserable, surrounded by people who wanted to use him, betray him. He was poisoned at a dinner party by someone he thought was a friend. And again, that same feeling as he died, life after life after life, some short, some long, some filled with joy, some filled with suffering, but all ending the same way, in death. And in that moment of death, always that same sensation of being pulled back, of being reset, of being trapped in the cycle. But the more he remembers, the more he notices something, a pattern. In almost every life, at some point, someone mentions the master. Sometimes it's a warning. Don't anger the master. Sometimes it's a threat. The master will punish you. Sometimes it's just a passing comment. The master watches over these lands. The master is always there, always lurking in the background, like a shadow that follows him through every lifetime. And then the protagonist remembers something important, something that changes everything. In his first life, before the soldiers came, before the village was destroyed, there were signs. Strange things happening in the area. Crops failing in nearby villages, animals acting weird, people disappearing, and the robed man who came demanding tribute. He wasn't just a random messenger, he was testing them. The master was testing the village to see if they would submit. And when they didn't, when they refused, the master didn't just punish the village. He punished the protagonist specifically, because the protagonist was special. Even back then, even as a poor village boy, his soul was different, stronger, brighter. The master could sense that, could see that potential. And when the village refused, the master decided to trap that soul, to claim it, to feed on it for eternity. The protagonist realizes the truth. His first death wasn't random. It wasn't just collateral damage. It was targeted, planned. The soldiers were sent specifically to kill him, to activate the curse. And everything since then, all 998 lifetimes, has been part of that curse. He's been food, energy for the master. With each death, each rebirth, his soul produces spiritual energy, and the master has been harvesting it for centuries. The protagonist feels sick, angry, violated. He's not a person to the master. He's a resource, a thing to be used and discarded over and over again. But he pushes past the anger, because now he knows the truth. And according to the book, knowing the truth is the first step to breaking free. The protagonist decides he needs to find out more. He needs to find someone who knows about the master, about this curse, about how to break it. The book gave him some information, but not enough. He needs guidance. He needs help. So he makes a decision. He leaves his village. He abandons his simple life as a blacksmith's apprentice and sets out on a journey. He doesn't tell the blacksmith where he's going. He just packs a small bag with some clothes, some food, the book, and what little money he saved, and he starts walking. He travels from town to town, city to city, asking questions, looking for information. He visits libraries, temples, anywhere that might have old knowledge. Most people have never heard of the master, but a few, usually old scholars or priests, react with fear when he mentions the name. They tell him to stop asking questions, to forget about it, that some things are better left unknown, that digging into these matters only brings danger. But the protagonist doesn't give up. He keeps searching. He spends weeks traveling, sleeping in barns or under trees, eating whatever he can afford. He follows rumors and legends, chases down every lead, no matter how small. And finally, after what feels like forever, he finds someone who's willing to talk. An old monk living in a remote monastery high in the mountains. The journey to reach the monastery is difficult. The protagonist has to climb narrow paths, cross dangerous bridges, endure cold winds, but he makes it. The monastery is small, ancient, built from gray stone that's weathered by centuries. Only a handful of monks live there, devoted to meditation and study. The protagonist asks to speak with the eldest among them. The monk who comes to meet him is ancient, probably in his 90s, maybe older. His face is deeply wrinkled, his body frail, but his eyes are sharp and clear. He has a long white beard that reaches his chest, and he moves slowly but with purpose. When the protagonist tells him about the master and the curse, the monk doesn't look surprised. In fact, he looks like he's been waiting for this conversation, like he knew someone would eventually come asking these questions. The monk gestures for the protagonist to follow him. They walk through the monastery to a small room filled with old scrolls and books. The monk carefully pulls out a particular scroll, yellowed with age, and unrolls it on a wooden table. "I've spent my entire life studying these matters," the monk says. His voice is soft but steady. "The master, the curses, the cycles of reincarnation. Most people think these are just stories, legends, but they're real, very real." He tells the protagonist a story about a powerful entity that has existed for thousands of years. An entity that feeds on souls, that traps people in cycles of reincarnation, making them live and die over and over again, harvesting their spiritual energy with each death. This entity is known by many names across different cultures and different times. Some call it the Shadow, some call it the Devourer, some call it the Eternal Hunger. But most commonly, it's called the Master. The Master doesn't curse random people. It specifically targets souls with high spiritual potential. Souls that are strong, bright, special. Because those souls produce more energy, and the more times they die and are reborn, the more energy the Master can collect. "You were chosen," the monk says, looking directly at the protagonist. "Even in your first life, even as a poor village boy, your spiritual energy was stronger than most people's." The Master sensed that, and when you refused to serve, when your village refused, the Master decided to trap you instead. "For how long?" the protagonist asks. 999 lifetimes, the monk says. That's the structure of the curse. 999 lives of death and rebirth, with memory erasure between each one. And if you don't break free by the end of the 999th life, the curse resets. You go back to life 1 and it starts all over again, but this time with no chance of ever becoming aware. The awareness only comes in the final cycle. The protagonist feels cold. "So this is my only chance." "Yes," the monk confirms. "If you don't break the curse in this life, you'll be trapped forever, with no hope of escape." The protagonist takes a deep breath. "Then tell me how to break it." The monk nods. "The curse has a weakness. No curse is truly unbreakable. There are cosmic laws that even the Master must follow. And the weakness is this. If the cursed soul can remember all of its past lives, especially the first life, it can break free. Because remembering gives the soul power. It gives it strength. It lets it reclaim all the energy that was taken." "I'm already remembering," the protagonist says. "I've been using meditation to access my past life memories." "Good," the monk says. "But partial memories aren't enough. You need to fully remember your first life. Every detail, every moment, you need to relive it completely from birth to death. Only then will you have enough power to confront the Master." "Confront it?" the protagonist asks. "Yes," the monk says. "Breaking the curse isn't passive. You can't just remember and be done. You need to confront the Master directly, face to face, go to its realm and demand your freedom. And you need to prove that you fulfilled the conditions by recounting your first life in complete detail. If you can do that, the Master is bound by cosmic law to release you." The protagonist thinks about this. "So I need to remember everything about my first life, then somehow travel to the Master's realm and confront it." "Exactly," the monk says. "How do I get to its realm?" The monk's expression becomes more serious. "That's the dangerous part. The Master doesn't exist in the physical world. It exists in a realm between life and death, a realm that can only be accessed through a very specific state of consciousness. You need to put yourself on the edge of death while staying conscious. Your body needs to be dying, but your mind needs to be aware and in control. Only then can your soul travel to that realm." The protagonist understands immediately how dangerous this is. If I go too far, I actually die and get reincarnated again. Yes, the monk confirms. You'll lose all your memories and the curse will continue. But if you don't go far enough, you won't reach the realm. You need to be precise, perfectly balanced between life and death. Can you teach me how to do this? The monk nods slowly. I can, but you need to be prepared. The technique requires complete control over your body and mind. It takes time to learn, days, maybe weeks, and it's painful, very painful. You'll be pushing your body to its absolute limit. I don't care, the protagonist says. Teach me. And so the training begins. The monk teaches the protagonist advanced meditation techniques. How to slow his heartbeat to almost nothing. How to stop his breathing for extended periods. How to lower his body temperature. How to separate his consciousness from his physical form. The protagonist practices every day for hours at a time. At first, he can barely slow his heartbeat at all. But gradually, with the monk's guidance, he gets better. He learns to enter deeper and deeper states of meditation, learns to push past the body's natural survival instincts. It's exhausting, painful. There are moments when he thinks he might actually die during practice, moments when his heart stutters and he panics, breaking concentration. But the monk is always there, watching over him, ready to pull him back if needed. During this time, the protagonist also continues to recover memories of his first life. He meditates on specific moments, trying to fill in every detail. He remembers his childhood, playing in the fields with his sister, helping his mother cook simple meals, learning to work the land, the names of his neighbors, the layout of the village, the smell of his mother's cooking, the sound of his sister's laughter. He remembers everything, the good and the bad, the happy moments and the terrifying end. He relives it all, over and over, until it's as clear in his mind as his current life. And finally, after weeks of training, the monk tells him he's ready. Are you sure you want to do this? The monk asks. Once you begin, there's no turning back. If something goes wrong, you could die. You could be trapped forever. The protagonist doesn't hesitate. I'm sure. I've lived 999 lives as a prisoner. I'd rather die free than live another moment as someone's food. The monk nods, respect in his eyes. Then we begin tonight. That evening, the protagonist prepares himself. He eats a small meal, knowing it might be his last. He bathes in cold water from a mountain stream. He puts on simple white robes the monk provides. He centers himself, calms his mind, reviews everything he's learned. As the sun sets, he enters the meditation chamber. It's a small room, empty except for a single cushion in the center. The walls are bare stone, cold and gray. There are no windows, no decorations, nothing to distract. The monk sits nearby, outside the circle drawn on the floor around the cushion. He'll watch over the protagonist's body, making sure nothing disturbs him, ready to intervene if something goes catastrophically wrong. The protagonist sits on the cushion in meditation position. He closes his eyes. He focuses on his breathing. In and out. In and out. Slow and steady. He clears his mind of all thoughts, all worries, all fears. He lets himself sink into that deep meditative state he's practiced for weeks. And then he begins the technique. He slows his breathing, slower, slower, until he's taking only one breath every minute, then one breath every 2 minutes. His heart rate drops, his body temperature falls. He can feel his physical form starting to shut down, piece by piece. It hurts. His chest feels tight, his head throbs, every cell in his body is screaming at him to stop, to breathe, to live. But he pushes past it, he maintains control, he keeps going, slower, slower, until his heart is barely beating, until his breathing has almost stopped completely, until he's balanced on the very edge of death. And then, suddenly, he feels it. A pulling sensation, different from the curse. This is a doorway opening, a path revealing itself. He follows it. His consciousness separates from his body. He feels himself rising, floating, moving through darkness. It's disorienting, terrifying. He has no physical form anymore. He's just awareness, just thought, just soul. And then suddenly, he's somewhere else. He's standing in a vast, empty space. There's no ground beneath his feet, yet somehow he's standing. There's no sky above, no walls around him, just endless gray void stretching in all directions. It's completely silent, completely still, like being inside absolute nothingness. This is the realm between life and death. The protagonist looks around, trying to understand where he is. The gray void seems infinite, unchanging. But then he notices something in the distance, something moving. It starts as just a dark spot on the horizon, but it's growing, getting bigger, coming closer. No, not closer. It's expanding, growing. The spot becomes a shape. The shape becomes a mass. The mass becomes something so large the protagonist can't comprehend its size. It's like looking at a mountain, but a mountain made of shadow and darkness, constantly shifting and changing form. The master. The protagonist feels fear unlike anything he's ever experienced. This thing is ancient, powerful, overwhelming. Just being near it makes him feel like he's being crushed by an invisible weight. Like reality itself is bending around this entity's presence. He wants to run. Every instinct is telling him to flee, to escape, to hide, but he can't. This is why he came here. This is what he needs to do. He forces himself to stand still, to stand firm. The master notices him. The shadowy form shifts, and suddenly there's something like a face looking down at him. It has no real features, just two glowing white eyes floating in darkness. Eyes that seem to see everything. Past, present, future. Every secret, every thought. And then it speaks. Its voice is like 1,000 voices speaking at once, echoing through the void. Male and female, young and old, human and inhuman, all layered together into something that makes the protagonist's consciousness ache just from hearing it. You remember, it's not a question, it's a statement. The master knows, of course it knows. The protagonist finds his voice, or whatever passes for a voice in this place. I remember, all of it, every life, every death, and I remember you. The master laughs. The sound is terrifying, like avalanches and thunderstorms and screaming all mixed together. The entire void seems to shake with it. You are stronger than I expected, the master says. Most souls break after 100 lives. They fragment, dissolve, become nothing, but you made it to 9999. Impressive, very impressive. Why me? The protagonist asks. The question has been burning in his mind since he started remembering. Why did you curse me? Because you were valuable, the master says simply. No regret, no apology, just a statement of fact. Your soul burns brighter than most. Each time you die, I gain more energy than I would from 100 normal souls. You have been very profitable. The way it says that word, profitable, makes the protagonist sick. He's not a person to this thing. He's a resource, a tool, a thing to be exploited. I'm not your food, the protagonist says. His voice is steady, despite the fear coursing through him. I'm not your property. I'm breaking this curse, right now. The master laughs again. You think you can break my curse? Child, I have existed for eons. I have claimed millions of souls. I have fed on the energy of countless lifetimes. What makes you think you're special? Because I remember, the protagonist says. And according to the laws of the universe, once a cursed soul fully remembers, the curse loses its power. You can't hold me anymore. The master's eyes narrow. The temperature in the void seems to drop. You've been talking to that meddling monk. He told you the rules. The rules that you have to follow. The protagonist says, because even you aren't above cosmic law. You can trap souls, you can feed on them, but if they break the conditions of the curse, you have to let them go. That's the law. That's the balance. Even an entity as old and powerful as you can't break it. There's a long silence. The master stares at the protagonist with those glowing eyes. The void around them seems to pulse with tension. The protagonist can feel the master's anger, its frustration, radiating like heat from a fire. Very well, it finally says. Its voice is colder now, less amused. You know the rules, but knowing them and fulfilling them are different things. You say you remember everything. Prove it. Tell me about your first life, every detail, from the moment you were born to the moment you died. If you can do that, if your memory is truly complete, then I'll release you. But if you fail, if there are gaps, if there are things you don't remember, then you haven't fulfilled the conditions, and you'll remain mine. The protagonist takes a deep breath, or whatever counts as breathing in this realm. This is it. This is the final test. He closes his eyes and lets the memories flow. I was born in a small village, he begins, on the eastern edge of a kingdom whose name I never learned. My mother gave birth to me in our small house with only the village healer there to help. It was early spring. I remember my mother telling me later that the cherry blossoms were in bloom that day. He continues, describing everything. His earliest memories as a child. Learning to walk. His first words. The feeling of dirt under his feet as he learned to help in the fields. The taste of his mother's simple vegetable stew. The way his sister was born when he was 4 years old, and how he promised to always protect her. He describes the village in detail. There were exactly 53 families living there. The village elder's name was, actually, the protagonist realizes he never knew the elder's actual name. Everyone just called him Elder. But he remembers what the man looked like. Tall, with gray hair and kind eyes, he had a scar on his left hand from a farming accident years ago. He describes his neighbors. The family that lived next to them had 3 sons, all older than him. They would sometimes let him tag along when they went fishing in the stream. The woman who lived across the path made the best bread in the village, and once a month she would share some with everyone. He describes the fields where they worked, the exact layout, the irrigation ditches they dug, the crops they planted, mostly wheat and vegetables, the way the sun would beat down during summer, making the work almost unbearable, the way his mother would sing while she worked, old songs she learned from her own mother. He describes his childhood in exhaustive detail, every memory he can access, the time he fell and scraped his knee and cried until his mother kissed it better. The time he and his sister found a bird with a broken wing and tried to nurse it back to health. The time he got sick with a fever and thought he was going to die, but his mother stayed up all night, putting cold cloths on his forehead. The master listens in silence. Its eyes never leave the protagonist, but it doesn't interrupt. The protagonist continues through the years, becoming a teenager, learning more difficult work in the fields, starting to understand how hard his mother worked to keep them fed and clothed, growing closer to his sister, who idolized him and followed him everywhere. And then he reaches the dark part, the part he's relived in nightmares. I was 15, he says. Almost 16. That's when the man in dark robes came to our village. He describes that day in detail. It was late autumn. The harvest had been poor that year. Everyone was worried about the coming winter. And then this stranger appeared, claiming to speak for the master. The protagonist remembers the man's face now. Sharp features, dark eyes, a smile that never reached those eyes. He wore black robes with silver embroidery that seemed to shimmer when he moved. He carried a staff made of dark wood. He demanded tribute. The protagonist continues. Food, money, livestock. Said the master protected our lands and required payment. But we had nothing to give. The harvest had failed. We barely had enough to feed ourselves through winter. He describes the meeting in the village center, how all the families gathered, how the elder tried to explain their situation, how the man in dark robes grew angry, how he warned them that refusing the master meant death. He gave us 1 week to gather tribute, the protagonist says. 1 week to find something, anything to offer. But we had nothing. Some families talked about leaving, but where would we go? We had no resources, no connections in other places. This was our home. He describes the fear that settled over the village during that week. How people stopped singing, how children stopped playing. how everyone knew something terrible was coming but didn't know how to stop it. And then he describes that final day, the day everything ended. I was in the fields with my mother, he says. His voice is steady, but inside he's reliving every moment. It was early morning. We were trying to gather what little crops we could salvage, and then I smelled smoke. He describes running back to the village, seeing the flames, hearing the screams, finding soldiers everywhere, at least 30 of them, maybe more. They wore uniforms he didn't recognize. They carried swords and spears, and they were killing everyone. I saw the elder first, the protagonist says. He was trying to protect some of the younger children. He was unarmed. One of the soldiers cut him down like he was nothing. The children scattered, but the soldiers chased them. He describes the chaos in painful detail, how his mother tried to pull him away, to make him run, but he couldn't. He was frozen, watching his world burn. And then I saw my house, he says. It was on fire, and my sister was there. She was trapped. The flames had surrounded the building, and she couldn't get out. She was screaming for me, for our mother. His voice breaks slightly, but he continues. I ran to her. I didn't think, I just ran. But a soldier stopped me. He was bigger than me, stronger, trained. I grabbed a hoe from the ground and swung it at him. I actually hit him, caught him on the shoulder. But it didn't matter. He barely flinched. He punched me in the stomach and I went down. The protagonist describes lying on the ground, gasping for air, unable to move, and having to watch as the flames consumed his house, as his sister's screams stopped, as his mother tried to run to the house and was killed by another soldier. The soldier who hit me stood over me, the protagonist says. He looked down at me with these empty eyes, like I wasn't even human, like I was just a thing in his way. And he said, "This is what happens when you refuse the master." He describes the sword coming down, the feeling of cold metal piercing his chest, the pain that exploded through his body, the blood pouring from the wound, the way his vision darkened at the edges. And as I died, the protagonist says, I felt something else, something beyond the physical pain. I felt my soul being grabbed, being pulled. There was this sensation, like hooks sinking into my very essence, like chains wrapping around something deep inside me. I didn't understand what it was then, but I know now. It was the curse, taking hold, trapping me. He describes his last moments, the darkness closing in, his last thought being that he failed, that he couldn't protect his family, that he was weak and useless and it was his fault they died. And then I was gone, he says. Dead, but not free, never free. The protagonist opens his eyes. He's been speaking for what feels like hours. Maybe it has been hours. Time doesn't work normally in this place. The master is silent. Those glowing eyes are still fixed on him, but something has changed. The entity seems less imposing somehow, less overwhelming. You truly do remember, the master finally says. There's something in its voice, not quite respect, but acknowledgement. Every detail, every moment, from birth to death, you have fulfilled the conditions. The protagonist feels a surge of hope. Then you have to release me, that's the law. Yes, the master says. And for the first time, it sounds angry, frustrated. It's hard to read emotion in that multi-layered voice. I do. The shadowy form begins to shift. The darkness starts to pull away from the protagonist. He can feel it, the curse lifting. The chains that have bound his soul for 999 lifetimes finally breaking. The weight that he's carried for so long, even without knowing it, suddenly disappearing. It's the most incredible feeling, like being able to breathe after drowning, like seeing sunlight after living in darkness, like waking up after a nightmare that lasted centuries. You are free, the master says. The words sound like they physically pain it to speak. Your soul is your own again. You will live this life, and when you die, you will move on to whatever comes next. No more cycles, no more rebirths, no more feeding me. Our contract is broken. The protagonist should feel happy, relieved, victorious, and he does for a moment. But then another feeling rises up. Anger, hot, burning anger. What about all the others? He asks. What about all the other souls you've trapped? Are you just going to keep doing this? Keep feeding on people forever? The master's eyes narrowed dangerously. That is not your concern. You wanted freedom. I gave it to you. Our business is done. No, the protagonist says. The word comes out stronger than he expected. It's not done because now I know how your curse works. I know the rules. I know how to break it. And I'm going to tell people. I'm going to teach them how to remember, how to break free. The master's form suddenly expands, becoming larger, more threatening. The void around them darkens. The pressure increases until the protagonist feels like he might be crushed out of existence. You dare threaten me? The voice is like thunder now, like the end of the world. You insignificant insect, you think you can defy me? I'm not threatening you, the protagonist says, standing his ground despite the fear. I'm just telling you what I'm gonna do. You can't stop me. You can't curse me again. The cosmic laws won't allow it. Once a soul is freed, it stays free. You said so yourself. The master roars, a sound so loud and terrible that the entire void shakes. Cracks appear in the gray nothingness, like reality itself is fracturing. You will regret this, the master screams. I will find ways around the rules. I will make your remaining life a living hell. I will hunt everyone you care about. I will destroy everything you try to build. Maybe, the protagonist says. His voice is calm, steady, because he's already won, he's already free, and nothing the master threatens can change that. But it'll be my life, my choice, my risk to take, and every soul I help free is one less feeding you. Eventually you'll starve. The master lunges forward, its massive form rushing toward the protagonist like a tidal wave of shadow. But it can't touch him. There's an invisible barrier between them now. The protection of cosmic law. The protagonist is free, and the master can't change that, can't hurt him, can't do anything but rage. You will regret this, the master hisses again. I promise you that. You have made an enemy of something far more powerful than you can imagine. Maybe, the protagonist says one more time, but I'll regret it as a free man. And that's worth everything. He doesn't wait for a response. He focuses his consciousness, finding that thread that connects him to his physical body, and he pulls himself back. The void disappears. The master's rage fades into nothing, and suddenly he's gasping, his eyes flying open, his body convulsing as he sucks in desperate breaths. He's back in the meditation chamber, back in his body, back in the physical world. The monk is kneeling next to him, looking worried. You were gone for 3 days, the monk says. I was starting to think you weren't coming back. 3 days? It felt like hours, maybe minutes. The protagonist slowly sits up. His body is weak, shaky, like he's been sick for weeks. But his soul feels lighter than it ever has. The curse is gone. Really, truly gone. He can feel it. Or rather, he can feel the absence of it. Like a chain he didn't know he was wearing has finally been removed. I did it, he says. His voice is hoarse. I broke the curse. I'm free. The monk's eyes widen. You actually did it. In all my years of studying these things, I've never heard of someone actually breaking free. It's possible, the protagonist says, which means others can do it too. I need to write this down. I need to create a guide, something that future trapped souls can use to remember and break free. The monk nods slowly. That's a noble goal, but dangerous. The master won't be happy about this. I don't care, the protagonist says. He struggles to his feet, leaning on the monk for support. I've spent 999 lifetimes serving its needs. Now I'm going to spend this life fighting back. Over the next several months, the protagonist does exactly that. He writes everything down, the signs of a cursed reincarnation, how to access past life memories safely, how to build up those memories slowly without breaking your mind, how to fully remember your first life, how to enter the realm between life and death, how to confront the master and demand freedom according to cosmic law. He writes it all in simple, clear language. No fancy words, no complicated rituals, just direct, practical instructions that anyone can follow. The monk helps him make copies. They work together, carefully transcribing each page multiple times. They create dozens of copies, then hundreds. They send them out with traveling merchants, with pilgrims, with scholars. They hide copies in libraries, monasteries, temples across multiple kingdoms. They give them to people who promise to spread them further. The book spreads slowly but surely, and over time, the protagonist starts hearing stories. Stories of people who read the book and realize they were trapped in cycles. People who used the techniques and remembered their past lives. People who broke free, not many. The process is hard. Most people aren't strong enough to handle remembering hundreds of lifetimes. Most can't maintain the meditation required to reach the master's realm. Most give up or fail along the way. But some make it, and each one is a victory. Each one is a soul reclaimed from the master's grasp. The protagonist never goes back to being a blacksmith's apprentice. He stays at the monastery, working with the monk. Together they create a sort of school, a place where people who suspect they're trapped can come to learn, a place where they can practice the techniques safely, with guidance, with support. He meets other freed souls. They come to the monastery to thank him, to share their stories. Each one is different, different lives, different circumstances, but all trapped by the same entity, all freed by the same method. The protagonist doesn't get married, doesn't have children. His purpose now is different. He's dedicated this life to fighting against the master, to freeing as many souls as possible. It's the least he can do after being freed himself. Years pass. The protagonist grows older. His hair turns gray, his body becomes weaker, slower, but his mind stays sharp. His memories stay clear. All 999 lives worth of memories. It's a burden sometimes, having that much history in his head, but it's also a gift. It makes him wise, patient, understanding. He's in his 70s when he feels it. The end approaching. Not another death leading to rebirth, but actual, final death. The death that comes for all free souls. The death that leads to whatever comes next. The death he hasn't experienced in 999 lifetimes. He's not afraid. He's lived 999 lives full of fear and confusion and pain. This one life of clarity and purpose and freedom has been worth all of them combined. He lies down in his simple room at the monastery. The monk, who is now ancient himself, probably over 100 years old, but still alive through some combination of meditation techniques and sheer determination, sits beside him. "Thank you," the protagonist says. His voice is weak but sincere. "For everything. For teaching me. For helping me. For believing me when I told you about the curse." The monk smiles. His wrinkled face creases even more. "Thank you for having the courage to break free. You've changed things. Maybe not a lot, but enough. The master is weaker now. I can feel it. The balance has shifted, and it'll keep shifting as more souls break free." The protagonist nods slowly. He thinks about all the lives he's lived. The soldier, the thief, the noble, the scholar, the farmer, hundreds of others. All stolen from him, all used as fuel for an ancient entity's hunger. But this life was his. Really, truly his, and he used it well. "Do you think they're waiting for me?" he asks suddenly. "My mother, my sister, from my first life." The monk's expression softens. "I don't know what comes after death for freed souls. No one does. But if there's any justice in the universe, then yes. I think they're waiting for you." The protagonist closes his eyes. He lets his mind wander back to that first life. Not the terrible ending, but the good parts. Playing in the fields with his sister, his mother singing while she worked, simple, happy moments before everything went wrong. "I'm coming," he whispers. "I'm finally coming home." He feels himself slipping away, but this time there's no bright white light, no sensation of being pulled into a new body, no curse grabbing his soul, just peace, just rest. Just a feeling of moving forward into something new, something unknown, something that's his choice to experience. He takes his last breath, and then he's gone. But his legacy remains. The books he wrote continue to spread across the world, copied and recopied, translated into different languages, hidden in libraries and temples and monasteries everywhere. More and more people read them. More and more trapped souls find their way to freedom. The master rages in its realm, feeling its power slowly drain. It tries to adapt, to change its curse to prevent souls from remembering. But cosmic law is cosmic law. The rules are the rules. The loophole exists, and now people know about it. It takes decades, centuries, but slowly the number of trapped souls decreases. One by one, they break free. They remember, they confront, they reclaim their freedom. The master tries to create new curses, new traps. But word has spread. People are more aware now. They recognize the signs, they know what to look for. Communities form around teaching these techniques, around helping trapped souls break free. The entity that once seemed unstoppable, that once fed on countless souls across countless lifetimes, begins to starve. Its power diminishes. The realm it inhabits starts to shrink, to fade, to lose substance. And it all started because one soul, after 999 lifetimes of suffering, finally remembered who he was, finally fought back, finally refused to stay trapped. The protagonist's name is forgotten by history. No one remembers him as an individual, but his impact is eternal. His books become legendary. The techniques he wrote down become standard teaching in spiritual communities across the world. Centuries later, the master is barely more than a whisper, a shadow of what it once was. Most of its trapped souls have broken free. Its power to create new curses has weakened to almost nothing. It still exists, but only barely. And it knows that eventually it will fade completely. All because one person refused to give up. One person who lived 999 lives without knowing the truth. One person who, in his final life, remembered everything and used that knowledge to fight back. That's the real story. Not just about breaking one curse, but about how one act of courage can ripple outward, affecting countless others, changing the world in ways that echo through eternity. The protagonist was just a poor village boy in his first life. Nothing special, nothing remarkable, but he became something more. Not through power or destiny, but through simple determination. Through refusing to accept his fate. Through fighting for freedom, not just for himself, but for everyone. And in the end, he won. Not just his own freedom, but freedom for countless souls he would never meet. People living centuries after his death, breaking their own curses, reclaiming their own souls, all using the techniques he discovered and shared. That's what makes a real hero. Not power, not destiny, just the courage to fight back against impossible odds. The strength to keep going when everything seems hopeless. The determination to make the world better, even if you don't live to see the results. The protagonist did that, and the universe is better for it. His 999 lives of suffering weren't meaningless. They gave him the strength and wisdom to break free. And his one life of freedom wasn't wasted. He used it to ensure that others could break free too. The cycle is broken. The curse is defeated. The master is dying. And somewhere, in whatever comes after death, the protagonist rests peacefully, knowing that his suffering meant something, that his fight mattered, that he made a difference. And that's the most important thing any soul can hope for. To leave the world better than they found it. To fight for what's right. To help others find their way to freedom. The protagonist did all of that, and his legacy will live forever.